Ladies and gentlemen, podcast from the pods, 4100, the Mecklenburg County Detention Center, because we don't say jail and we don't say inmate. Well, we're going to talk about something today that always is challenging for me, and that is the population at the Mecklenburg County Detention Center. So we're kind of rebranding what we're doing here. We're not going to talk about how many people here, but we are going to talk about when they are released. So what I came to notice a couple of weeks ago, 2 young men were released from the Mecklenburg County Detention Center. And here's why it was so significant to me. Both of these young men stayed at the Mecklenburg County Detention Center for 6.5 years waiting to go to trial. So you have to understand, the detention center, commonly known as the jail, is a detention center detaining men and women prior to going to court before they are sentenced to go to prison, or if they are found not guilty in court. So what I'm saying is the Mecklenburg County Detention Center is a detention center and not a correctional facility. Correctional facilities are the prisons, commonly known as prisons. But when we were talking, me and these 2 young men, they were excited. The first young man, his mother came down, and we talked about him being released, and him and his mother were very excited. And I told them to call me later because there was some complication of him being released and the time, because what normally happens is that once the person pleads guilty, credit for time served, they normally would go to Raleigh and they would calculate their time, and then they would be released from Raleigh. So to alleviate all that headache, Raleigh will now allow us to release that person from our custody, coming through their system of counting the right dates and times to make sure that the person served each and every day they are credited to. So what does that mean? When a person is plead guilty in court and said time served, we have to send paperwork to Raleigh to make sure that that is the accurate count of numbers that we have day for day, so they be released. So that was the issue for one young man. The second issue of the young man who's being released for 6.5 years was credited for his time served, and he was instantly released to his parents. And he went home, and we spoke to each other, and we had a great conversation. I know this is going to sound funny, and I know people are going to chastise me for it, but I gave each and every one of those young men my cell phone number. Why? Because I was not sure how they was going to be integrated back into their community and society after being removed from 6.5 years. And so here's why. When we were talking to them, they felt good about going home, felt good about their family, felt good about just taking a shower, felt good about just eating a normal meal. And so they talked about that and reunited with their family. But here's what some of the things that I said that we were going to talk about, because we had to tackle the problem of being absent from your family for 6.5 years. The second thing that we tackled with this young man is the learning curve of getting back in society, learning the day-to-day routine of just being normal at your home, instead of having a count here, having to roll call, having to go through all the things that is systematically designed and created even while you're at a detention center. And then the last thing was mental health. So we talked about, these young men, mental health, and neither one of them went through our mental health program. And I asked them why. And they said they didn't want to be characterized as somebody having a problem. And so why was that significant to me? Because when I first came to the Mecklenburg County Detention Center, I created North Carolina's first mental health program pod inside a detention center like no other sheriff's office had. So I was very happy to create that. And then we also created the RISE program, Restoring Individually, Safely, and Effectively, the RISE program. And that RISE program was so successful for the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office is that the state of North Carolina now allows this sheriff's office to serve 39 other counties in men and women who are going through behavioral health problems. And why do we like doing that? Because we want to return the citizen back better than we received them anyway. And why is that important? Because we're letting these people go back in society with their families, their loved ones, your neighbors, your friends, the churches, your school, and they're going back, and are they equipped to really, really function properly, after being gone for 6 years. The other thing that we talked about is the learning curve. You know, a lot of things happen in the world when you're gone for 6 years. A lot of things happen when you're gone for 1 year. We get a new president, and we got all kind of other things. So all of that happens in 1 year or 4 years. You know, a lot of things happen. You know, just today I was looking at, you know, the Ray-Ban glasses, but now everybody has, you know, the AI glasses, and all that happened in 1 or 2 months. So what do we do to help people regain their stability back into the community? We have programs like the Next Great 50, Dress for Success. We even had digital literacy programs. And what is digital literacy program? Some of these individuals don't even understand what a word suite is, or they don't understand what Word is, Excel, just simple things as that, even having an email address. So we bring them back to reality for digital literacy, along with Dress for Success. And the one that I love most and always is my favorite is the Next Great 50, Peace for Poverty. Why? Because men and women can leave here not job ready, but having their own businesses. I can tell you 2 successful businesses in the last 1 year. One of them is a coffee truck in front of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. The other, this young man is training dogs in Kernersville, North Carolina, and he's now on some farm with some reptiles. I told him, I'm not coming to see the reptile, but I'll come for the dog training issue, but I'm not going to come to see it in the reptile, just not going to do it. You know, I don't like snakes, and don't like crocodiles or nothing crawly. But imagine you leaving the Mecklenburg County Detention Center with your own business. So we do get them back on their feet, but then the absence from family, that is important. I didn't know how important it was until I talked to a couple of the residents here. We have a small room that fathers or mothers could bring their children to reunite with their fathers or mothers and have a private setting. Why is that so important? Because a little girl came to me one day and said, Sheriff, I want to be able to touch my father. And I said, well, you know, you can look through the glass and you can't come inside and touch him. And she said, do you touch your children? And I said, yes. And do you like touching your children? I said, yes. She said something that didn't make sense to me in first. She said, do you know how your children smell? And I said, no. And she said, my dad tells me I smell like vanilla all the time. And so when he hugs me, he said, ooh, I smell you, my vanilla bean. And so she wanted to have that same experience with her father. So here we created a small room that fathers and mothers and families can reunite and actually touch each other, hold each other, and all of that. And so why is that important? Because we're trying to return the citizens back better than they have. And ironically, one of the 30 people who was going to be removed from the detention center, he actually received life in prison. This young man is 31 years old. The significance of this person was I knew his mother and I knew his grandparents because we went to college together. And so when we were talking about everything that they needed, after he was sentenced for life in prison, his mother was devastated. Okay, now she has to help raise his son. And so she said, could he possibly have a visit so he can hold his son? I did not know he has never held his son until we created that environment inside the detention center. Now, for some people say, well, that's not a big thing. Well, it was for him because he's going to prison for the rest of his life. He will never probably get a chance to hold his son again. So we gave him that privilege, and I still have pictures of it, and I watched them, and it was very much emotional. I can tell you, it was extremely emotional, but it was good for me, and it was good for him. And we did this again prior to that of a young man wanted to reunite with his daughter, and we allowed him. And so the absence of you and your family during these 6 years or 5 years or 3 years is very important. But are we handing our returning citizens back into the community on a warm handoff? And what I mean is, We release probably 50 to 60 people a day back into the society who have stayed here for a short time, maybe 2 or 3 days, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but a very short time. But each morning I get up and I see how many people that the detention center received the night before and how many people have been released the morning of. Now, we're just releasing them out of the building. They're going to the bus stop, people pick them up in front, or they're just walking. But are we releasing them back to someone that would encourage them to do better, encourage them not to come back, and help them find a job, help them find a place to stay? A place to stay. A place to stay. Why am I saying that? Because one of our individuals who left here, he was very excited about leaving. His family welcomed him home, but all of a sudden there was an issue about his address and where he needed to stay. And he called me and he said, "Sheriff, I got a problem. I got a housing problem." And I said, "Why do you have a housing problem?" He says, "Well, where my probation officer wants me to stay, they don't want me to stay there. And where my probation officer wants me to stay, I don't have the means to rent, buy, or anything at this particular time." Because he said, "I just left the Mecklenburg County Detention Center after being there 6.5 years. I had no income in my account. I don't have a job yet, but all they're telling me that I need to find a place to stay." Shouldn't there be an organization or organizations to give that warm handoff? Shouldn't it be a place where we can call and say, "Hey, I'm having 2 or 3 young men released today who have been inside a detention center for 6 years, and they need a place to stay"? Why? Because if we do not find them some place to stay, or some stability, or some avenue to receive income, they will be back into the Mecklenburg County Detention Center. Why? I've seen it too many times. So why isn't there a warm handoff? Why don't we try to take care of the people who we have said that paid a debt already to society? Why can't we have organizations to say, "Sheriff, how many people are going to be released today? Can they come to a center and get help? Can they be helped if they come to you?" Well, that would be a good thing, but I have very little hope that that would be established with the recent administration, both locally and nationally, because a lot of programs and grassroots organizations have been, as they say, defunded. They didn't defund the police, but they certainly defund a lot of grassroots organizations that has been in the trenches helping these individuals who are being returned back to society. And one of those, I'm going to mention them always, is Block Love. And there are many more out there. But imagine being released after 6.5 years, you don't have a job, then you're being told where to stay, but you don't have the income to stay there. So this is a problem. And so what we did, and we're going to talk about this at another time, we're going to talk about the resources that we have here at the detention center. Now, believe it or not, months ago, with very little publicity, we opened a post-release center. Well, what's a post-release center? A post-release center is a center where you can absolutely just walk up to the door Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, walk in and say, "I need some help. I need a bus pass. I need to use a computer. I just need somebody to help me with a resume. Do you have a thumb drive? Well, can I just use the computer to check to see where they are hiring?" Now, why I love this so, because last week I was in and out the resource center 3 different days. On the 3rd day, I saw an individual coming out with his backpack, and he seemed to be happy. And I said, "You seem to be happy today." And he said, yeah, man, I finally got a job. I'm going to start in a couple of days. And I said to him, "I saw you for a couple of days. I saw for you a couple of days. You were inside, and you were really getting it." He said, "Man, this is the best thing that has happened to me." And he received a job. But he laughed also. He said, "Well, who are you?" And I said, "I'm the sheriff." He said, "Oh, man, you're the sheriff?" I said, "Yes, I'm the sheriff." He said, "Well, I want to thank you for the snacks." I said, "The snacks?" He said, "Yeah, inside your post-release center, which is just outside the Mecklenburg County Detention Center, is our post-release center. And my staff, thinking forward, have snacks inside the post-release center. So when you come sitting at the computer, you can grab something to drink and some of the snacks to munch on while you're surfing the internet for a job. But these are things that we need to consider each and every time we are letting people out of the detention center. So I'm hoping that organizations out here come to us and say, Sheriff, what can we do? How can we help these people being released from the detention center better? I want that conversation. I need that conversation. Why? Because if I don't have that conversation, they're going to return back to the detention center and we start all over again. And for heaven's sakes, don't let anybody die here, because when they die here, then we are back to the last podcast. Well, why did he die? Why did he do? Well, if you help me keep people away from here, it will help us tremendously not to be under the news each and every time about a person passing away. But it is better for them to pass inside here, sheltered, food, fed, clothing, and receive some medical attention and possibly behavioral health attention, and not be found in a building, alley, or someplace beside a building and always says homeless man, homeless woman, which we call unhoused, found unresponsive, no foul play. Once you say the word no foul play, there will never be any news after no foul play. But this is what we do here. We want to invite you to come down to the detention center and see what we do. We have to feed 1,500 people 3 times a day. That means we have to do laundry for 1,500 people all the time. Do you know that we do 900 medical passes each day? What is a medical pass? The same thing they do at the hospital. When you're there and they come by for your medication, you get your meds that day and the doctor come and see you. So come by and don't always criticize before you know what really goes on here, because we are helping people return back better than they have. Why? Because we have more programs than any other detention center in North and South Carolina, and I would say probably on the East Coast. I'll challenge you. If you don't, I don't know, come down and see what we got. But this is it. This is what we do here. We always want to return our citizens back, but we need your help. Yes, we have programs. Yes, we have information that we can give them, but we also need your support. We understand all the criticism. We'll take all the criticism, but we also need your support. And before you criticize so much, you may come down and be educated just a little bit. Why? I've had many people to come down to be educated about our detention center. Spent 2.5 hours with the local minister last week, a local CEO, which I will not call his name, who runs a super large company here in the Carolinas, came to spend 2.5 hours with me. He was absolutely amazed when he left. He had no idea what we do here. Just like most people, they believe that you bring people in, you just lock them up, put them in a cell, and feed them the same diet that you feed everyone else. That is not a truthful statement. No, we don't feed everybody the same thing. So I invite y'all to come down, take a tour, and then you can criticize later and talk about it later. But bring ideas, bring solutions. When people criticize, I'm wishing that one time at the bottom of the line, we said, check the link at the bottom, you'll see a solution, but that won't happen. But anyway, we're going to wrap this up and we're going to call it a day, and we want you all to always link in with us. Apple Podcasts and Spotify, click the link, follow us, please learn something, teach us something. But as they say, remember this, if you don't have a plan, they definitely have a plan for you. Thank you. We're out.